Hello everyone, my name is Legend Ronnie and this game is Rise of Kingdoms. Max skill AETHEFLAED, what the F? And why not? I'm gonna review my commander spotlight video for AETHEFLAED because I just maxed out her skills and I'm actually using her on the battlefield. She's actually great. All I have to say about her is only good things. I know when I've done the first commander spotlight for her, I said that she is a barbarian killer, not to use her on the battlefield. Well, obviously I was wrong about it. I'm actually using her on the battlefield and she is really good on the battlefield. She is a commander that you can obtain from the expedition, so slowly everyone will going to max her out. So this is the way you can obtain her from the expedition. You just buy her sculpture every single day and just like that, in no time, without even thinking about it, you'll manage to max her out. On top of that, you get chests from this mission once you manage to 3-star these missions, which reward you AETHEFLAED sculptures or various other sculptures. So that's how you can obtain her. That's the only way you can obtain her sculptures. So she is a specific expedition commander and a really great one. In terms of her stars, I'm just gonna show you approximately how much you need to star a commander. I'm also gonna show you, because I have these two pictures, I have them over here, you know, for whenever I do commander guides, so you guys can have an idea in terms of stars and sculptures how many you need until you manage to max out all their skills. So it is quite costing in terms of stars, and I do have to say stars are a very premium resource in this game. Unless you throw in a ton of moolah, you know, it's not going to be easy to obtain stars. So this is one thing that you might want to think about before you want to 6-star a commander. If you're actually going to use that commander as a primary, or you're actually going to use that commander on the battlefield, before you just throw in your star. If you just want to use her for barbs, 5-star is more than enough. I have double C for that, which is also a barb killer for me, which you're noticing he's just 5 stars. 6 stars is so expensive. It's like 450 stars, give or take, on the regular ones. This ones, it's like 450 of the regular ones, which is quite huge just to get a legendary commander to 6-star. You want to take the right decision when you're going to 6-star a legendary commander. But now obviously she is max skills. You're noticing that I even have some extra sculptures, and you're probably wondering, why are you still buying her sculptures if she is max skills? That's because the Lost Kingdom. On the Lost Kingdom, you know, the first thing that you do, or probably the second, is when you take your Crusader Fortress and you rebuild it, you get to the third stage, where you trade in sculptures so you can buy all those goodies that you can in that shop. It takes like 10 million points, and I think the legendary ones quite give you a lot of coins. I don't actually remember how many, but that's exactly where I'm going to use her sculpture. So that's the reason I'm keep buying her sculptures from the expedition, so I can train them whenever I go back in the Lost Kingdom. Now, another important things about legendaries that you want to know before I go any further with the video is the talents. Talents only apply from the primary commander, and this is not just for the legendary, this is for all commanders, right? So talents only apply from the primary commander. They work for the second and your army, but only apply from the primary. It's same for the equipment. So equipment only applies from the primary commander. Now who should you pair with AETHEFLAED? This is a very interesting question. If you're in one of the new kingdoms, you probably don't have that many troops. You probably don't have that large pool of troops, so you can just do 5 marches on the field of specific type of troops. That is a very true story. So then you probably need to do some mix of troops, or your 5th march or 4th march, depending how many troops you have, it has to be mix of troops. So if you have to do mix of troops, then I would say that Barca, it's kind of the best option for her, but Barca is a premium and a VIP commander, so probably not such a very good, you know, option for free-to-play, even though AETHEFLAED is a free-to-play commander. Everyone can get her from the expedition. But Barca is kind of her best pair for mix of troops. The reason I'm saying that is because they both have bonuses when they have at least 3 types of units in their armies. So there's 20% bonus, plus, not to mention, when you obtain her expertise, is the sweet extra 20% damage to your enemies. And then you have Hannibal Barca with his second skill, which also gives you another very nice 10%. That can bring you up to 50% bonus damage when you have mix of troops in the army. That's very significant if you want to ask me when you pair them together. But obviously AETHEFLAED, she is a very universal commander. That's pretty much where all the leadership commanders category fits in. They are very universal. You can use them in almost any army. You can use them almost everywhere you want to. Now, what I personally like the most about her, it's her primary skill. And that's the reason why she has a place in my army. That's the reason why I use her in my army. Even though I wasn't hyped about 2 seconds debuff. Because that's 2 seconds, 1, 2, they're just gone, you know. How long can they last? And 800 direct damage fact, I mean, epics have more damage. That's true. That's actually true. But I didn't take in consideration 2 things. One, she does a fun face shaping area, which is larger than any other commander with fun face shaping area. There's only one with circular area. So it is larger than most of them. That means that you have very high chances of hitting up to 5 targets when you're on the battlefield, you know, during the war and so on. And it doesn't have a penalty, because if you check some of the commanders like Mehmet, for example, which is again legendary, it has a penalty. Damage dealt to each target will reduce by 15% for each additional target. So the more target he hits, less damage he's dealing, and that's same for YSG. If you read on his skills, reduced by 50% for each additional target. So you know, more targets he hits, less damage. And again, when he's expertise YSG, he does circular area. That's why I didn't include him in the fun face shaping. So her primary skill is very, very powerful on the battlefield, and then I like her secondary skill with the counterattack damage taken reduction. That gives you a little bit of defensive option even when you use her with specific type of troops, and I do use her with specific type of troops. As I said, she is second to my Pelagius for debuffing, even though Pelagius is not debuffing, to be honest. But that's exactly how I use her right now. It's a pretty tanky, and I did notice that people do tend to take down AETHEFLAED on the battlefield because of how powerful her debuffing is from the primary skill. So she's kind of a target on the battlefield. I've noticed that. She's like on the list, because on the battlefield when his war is YSG is that the first who goes down, and then is Genghis Khan, who's the next that go down, and now it's kind of a AETHEFLAED somewhere on the list because her debuffing is very, very powerful, and the other marches benefit so much from this. It's just crazy. So again, you get a little bit of tankiness, you know, with counterattack damage reduction. This is pure barbs, you're not benefiting on the battlefield. This you're only benefiting on the battlefield if you have mix of troops, but I don't really recommend mix of troops. I'm very in favor of specific type of troops, and there where her expertise kind of bring out a little bit more for using a specific type of troops, because you have additional extra damage when enemies has been slow. So like I said, you can use her with Barca. It's for mix of troops. So for mix of troops, this is kind of the only pair that I see preferable with her for mix of troops, and the second one might be Joan of Arc. So if you actually have to do mix of troops, this is kind of the two pairs that I would do, and maybe somewhere around there you can include Scipio Africanus as well. So if you necessarily need to do mix of troops, this is kind of the only three pairs that I would find very useful for her. I might say other legendaries, but you know, if you working on that many legendaries, it means you have a lot of troops. You don't necessarily need to do mix of troops. You know, Mehmed is also a very viable option for her. Why not? They both do AoE and so on, Julius Caesar. But again, if you're working on this amount of legendaries, or you have that many legendaries, you definitely have more specialization commanders, you know, more specific for specific type of troops, and that can give you a slightly edge. Now, if you use her with Barca, or if you use her with Scipio or Joan of Arc, she can be primary. With these three pairs that I just mentioned, she can be primary. With anyone else you want to pair her, she has to be secondary. Now, as part of her talents, in the description of the video there is a link to my Discord, and that's where you find in more details about her talents. I can bring it up right now, but you much better find it there. Is like the whole picture. You can study it, save it, and so on. I'm always in favor of mobility, so I want to put this up front. So whenever I do talent builds on any of my commanders, I chase mobility, because you don't want to get caught up on the battlefield when you want to run, or you don't want to get 5 minutes late on the battlefield when everyone else is dead, you know. So you want to have mobility, you want to get there on time, or you want to retreat on time, you know, when the time comes. So obviously, for the field battles, mobility is the best thing you can do. Obviously, she is also a peacekeeping commander. That means that she is awesome at killing barbarians. She is the free-to-play queen when it comes to AoE barbarians, killing barbarians, and so on. My next stop is going to be strategic prowess, and then if I still have talents, I'll go for loose formation and probably fresh recruits. But this is for a specific type of troops, because as I said, I'm not so much in favor of mix of troops. If you want to do mix of troops and you want to use her for support, you have options. You can do the same talent build and then just get armored, because you do mix of troops and you want to deal a little bit of extra damage, so you want to, you know, boost that mix of troops, you know, the three types of troops that you have. I'm not sure if you'll still have talents, but I will probably go for armored as well. But loose formation is more important. For war, you can definitely drop Trophy Hunter, which is 3 talent points, but I would definitely get Thoroughbreds. I would definitely get the march speed. You definitely need that. You don't want to just get there and whatever happens, because you're just going to fill up your hospital. So you want to have march speed. March speed is also very important. Another very interesting build for her is going with full support talent tree. So that way you have more slow on the target. You know, she has slow with her second skill, but if you have Cage of Thorns, that's even more slow on the target, but then you have to drop march speed. So you need to sacrifice something if you actually want to slow the target, even though you probably just need one skill in Cage of Thorns, because that's all you need. You just need to be slow. It doesn't matter for how much it's gonna be slow. You just need to slow the target that you're hitting, so that way you can benefit from her expertise. Right, now very interesting and viable pairs for AETHEFLAED, my friends. Here comes the good part. A very interesting pair, which people probably haven't thought about it, is going to be 2 legendary ones. So the first one is going to be Constantine. First is for the same reason. You have the support talent tree, so you have Rejuvenate, you have Cage of Thorns, and because this guy is infantry, you can even have Snare of Thorns. So there's quite some march speed. You can keep march speed reduction, you can keep debuffing your target with, And because he's infantry, this guy is very tanky and he's also debuffing. But here is the problem. This is for 5 seconds. So obviously if you put AETHEFLAED as a second, she's doing debuffs for 2 seconds. So you're pretty much downgrading the primary skill of the attack debuffing from Constantine. So I'm not so hyped about putting them together, but as part of support role, because this damage taken reduction, this does apply to your armies around you, and just doing a lot of damage with infantry and being very tanky. That's a very interesting build, Constantine primary with AETHEFLAED secondary, because you also have attack and defense on your troops, you have some healing at some point, and a lot of infantry health bonus. That's an insane health bonus, yo. You know, that's an interesting pair as well. My recommendation is Baber's primary and AETHEFLAED secondary. You have Cavalry, you have mobility, you have the skill tree, so you'll boost her primary skill with skill damage. You have Cavalry, that means you have mobility with your Cavalry. Baber's slows the target's march speed by 2 seconds for 50%. How about that? So this is a very interesting build. Again, attack, so all the goodness. Nothing wrong about using Baber's with AETHEFLAED. They both hit up to 5 targets. WTF to that. Then another interesting pair is if you want to go with infantry with Sansu. Sansu primary, AETHEFLAED secondary. You have the counter-attack damage reduction, so you have a little bit of tankiness. You have the AoE, the debuffing. Sansu give you a little bit of skill damage and rage restoration from his primary skill, so that you can keep spamming skill whenever you're doing, you know, the group battles, the group fights. So you can keep debuffing the target and keep doing damage. So this is another very interesting pair you can go with. Like I said, I right now use it with Pelagius. I use Pelagius primary and AETHEFLAED secondary for the purpose of debuffing, a little bit of healing, which keeps them longer on the battlefield, you know, attack and defense to my calves, and rage restoration. So the skills actually go pretty often, to be honest, and again, they are very tanky on the battlefield. And that's exactly what I need. Other viable pairs, you can go with AETHEFLAED, you can go with Eulgi primary and AETHEFLAED secondary with, again, just infantry. That's again nothing wrong with that. Belisarius primary and AETHEFLAED secondary. This is only a 2-second debuff, and then you'll have AETHEFLAED, so you can pretty much have a continuity of debuffing for a couple of seconds. Using Belisarius primary and AETHEFLAED secondary, you have Cavalry, that means you also have mobility, and not to mention, when target's army, that's additional damage plus increased defense and march speed by 50% after leaving the battle. So if things goes wrong, you know, you don't want to keep your march until they actually get smashed, you know, because when a march goes under 50%, that's the moment when you're not very effective, and that's the moment when you get the most severely wounded, so you just want to bounce off. You have the ability with Belisarius to do that. Belisarius primary, AETHEFLAED secondary, there's nothing wrong with that. Plenty of options. Now, a very interesting pair, as I mentioned when I was talking about Constantine, there's 2 interesting builds for AETHEFLAED, is with Saladin primary. The reason I'm saying Saladin primary is 5-second march speed reduction, attack, defense, and march speed to your calves, because obviously you're gonna pair him with calves, skill damage reduction, counter attack damage reduction, and the skills they do stack. So that's 40% counter attack damage reduction from both commanders. WTF to that. That's a significant amount of counter attack damage reduction plus skill damage reduction. That makes this pair very tanky. You have the support tree, Conquering and Cavalry. So sacrificing some march speed from Conquering and probably sacrificing some more talents from Cavalry, you get pretty much get Cage of Thorns, but you don't need it with Saladin. So this is something that you actually need to understand. Saladin does 5-second march with his primary skill, so what would be the point to reduce march speed when you activate her skill? That's not gonna stack, so the Cage of Thorns will be pretty much useless because you have Saladin's primary skill, which reduces for 5 seconds. So you don't really need Cage of Thorns on this one, but if you just want to make this build more tanky than as it is right now, you can definitely get emergency protection. When troops led by this commander take skill damage, there's a 50% chance that it will gain additional 15% skill damage reduction for the next 3 seconds. So if you get swarmed, if Saladin gets swarmed, emergency protection will definitely go off on, and you'll have additional skill damage reduction. But you'll have to sacrifice some march speed for that. And definitely moment of triumph, and you will be able to get that. So this is 2, 5, 8, and you have 2, 3, 5, and 8. So you'll sacrifice that and you can get emergency protection. You can make them even more tankier. But honestly, I prefer the march speed. If things go bad, you just retreat, because that's why you have Cav in your army, so you can retreat. So this is another interesting build with Saladin primary and AETHEFLAED secondary that I would really like. Almost anywhere, or which build you want to make with AETHEFLAED as a second in command is pretty much gonna work. You want to do Hermann primary, AETHEFLAED secondary, so you can make use of your archers, and also make use of AETHEFLAED's debuff. Is definitely gonna work as well. There's nothing wrong. Leadership commanders, they are very universal commanders. They can fit in any army, but they don't excel in any. As crazy as it sounds, that's the best explanation I can give you. So they work in any army, but they don't actually excel in any. The specialization commanders are still kind of the best options you can go with, when you wanna pair, at least primary. Some players go Richard, because Richard obviously reduced the march speed, even though again it doesn't matter for how much the march speed is reduced. All it matters that it applies the march speed reduction, so that way you can benefit from the 20%. So everything works. All of these builds works, and again, she is the free-to-play queen. She's very powerful on the battlefield. Definitely a must-use commander on the battlefield. On one of your marches, you definitely wanna use her, especially once you expertise her, or at least when the primary 2 skills are maxed out. 2, she's the second best barbarian AoE commander. So if when it comes to killing barbarians or even bonus experience, she is the second best commander, because we have Lohar with 70% experience, and then we have Boudica with 20. So in terms of experience, she's the second. And as AoE, we have YSG, which does circular area. It doesn't do just fan shape when his expertise, but she does a larger fan shape than any other commanders. So that brings her a second place when it comes to AoE barbarians. So definitely a lot of utilities for AETHEFLAED. Must use commander. I'm really hyped about her as it is right now, because I'm using her, and this is how I'm using her. It is this much. So I used to have Pelagius and Double C, but right now I use Pelagius and AETHEFLAED. I use Babers and Sansu, Minamoto and Double C, and Genghis and Saladin. I'm really happy how the build works like this. I definitely need to try with Babers. I always wanted to. I did try with Saladin, but Genghis dies too fast. So I did try Saladin primary, because I have him level 60 with AETHEFLAED second. They work very well surprisingly, but Genghis dies too fast. I'm just not happy how fast he goes on yellow. It takes just a couple of seconds. So I just rather keep him with Minamoto. They have mobility. The moment they are on yellow, I just retreat them, and that's it. If they get targeted, it is what it is. If they don't get targeted, you know, they keep doing damage and so on. So this is my 4 cav marchers as it is right now. They're always subject to change, because I always try to adapt on the battlefield depending what people target and so on. That's pretty much about AETHEFLAED max skills. I'm really happy about her and really hyped about her. You should definitely work on her. Plenty of options. As many commanders that are being introduced, you're noticing that there is 41 commanders now into the game, plus we have one more which is not unlocked, and you know, they tend to introduce more and more commanders. So the more commanders they introduce, more options that are being available for us to use on the battlefield. Until next time, my friends, this is your boy Legend Ronnie signing off. Peace out, yo, and take care.